When we won this election, it wasn't in districts like mine or Alexandria's. However, she's a wonderful member of Congress. I think all of our colleagues will attest. But those are districts that are solidly Democratic. This glass of water would win with a D next to its name in those districts.
House Speaker Nancy Pelosi once again speaking out about Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. That on the heels of Pelosi's 60 Minutes interview this past weekend, where she said this.
Whatever orientation they came to Congress with, they know that we have to hold the center, that we have to go down the mainstream.
You have these wings, AOC and her group on one side.
That's like 5 people.
No, it's the progressive group. It's more than 5.
I'm a progressive.
Now, Cortez obviously is making waves nationally and also in New York, her hometown. And it's also how a piece in Politico magazine describes the situation. Power in New York has not traditionally been achieved through social media stardom. It has been achieved through the slow and painful courting of various constituency groups. It's achieved block associated by block association, community board by community board, labor union by labor union. Now that she's a star, city insiders wonder, is AOC willing to labor in those trenches? Does she even need to? And what happens if she doesn't? Well, David Friedlander, he's a contributor for New York Magazine and Politico Magazine, and he joins us now. And David, you know, count me among the skeptics. I did a lot over the years with Joe Crowley. Obviously, he was well positioned in Democratic leadership before the midterms. I was shocked, like many, she won, and I was furthermore shocked that it would play. I think she's acquitted herself well in hearings. She clearly has known how to work the zeitgeist. But do you have clarity if she's a show horse or a workhorse yet?
No, I don't think we do. I don't think we know. I mean, the big question for her coming in, I think, was whether she was willing to, now that she had won this upset victory, whether she was sort of willing to go back and sort of get acquainted with, you know, many of the folks who make up New York politics. And that's the elected officials, that's the community groups, that's the labor unions, that's the county parties and the political clubs, because she was already outside of everyone else's league. I mean, she was on the cover of national magazines like from the get-go. And I think she actually, in many ways, is kind of starting to do some of that in her own way.
Yet you hear the stories that she has one of the most disorganized offices on the Hill. It's not fully staffed. You report even your piece on the local level that the head of the Queens Democratic Party doesn't even know how to get a hold of her. Is that intentional, or is she so new to this that this organization is very real?
Well, I mean, I think she is new, and there's a lot of pressure on her. And, you know, I mean, she's also trying to pay her interns and trying to pay her staffers better, which, you know, presumably would mean she'd have less staffers. In terms of some of those, you know, political folks in New York, like the head of the Queens County Democratic Party, I mean, you know, she is against that level and that kind of sort of establishment Democratic politics. I'm sure that guy could get in touch with her if he wanted to. He doesn't want to, and she doesn't want to talk to him. And I don't think there's ever going to be a bridge built there.
You saw the Pelosi piece on 60 Minutes this past Sunday. You know there's a ton of grumbling. Do you attach most of that to envy, that this is somebody who never paid her dues, never went through the normal political food chain, let alone in New York, but nationally, and yet she's gotten the stardom that she has? Or do you think some of it is, my God, here we are, we finally get the majority back, we get the gavels, and you got a handful of folks that don't represent the majority of the freshman class that are taking us way to the left, jeopardizing the newfound prosperity?
Yeah, I mean, I think it cuts both ways. I mean, I think a lot of folks don't quite know how to deal with her because she has become just such a superstar, you know, and the way you sort of, people have been waiting in line for these congressional seats across New York for decades, just waiting for their turn. And you know, she just sort of circumvented all of that. And at the same time, she's 29 years old. She's still the lowest rung on the totem pole in Congress. And so you have this person who is achieving this international level of fame, but in the sort of nuts and bolts of it is still sort of on the bottommost level. There's a lot of jealousy, I think, but I think also folks are wondering, what is she going to sort of do some of the sort of scut work of politics like they all had to do?
I've spoken off the record with a lot of members of the New York delegation and this whole Justice Democrats group that was part of her shocker in the primary. They've targeted a whole lot of incumbent Democrats that they're going to go after in 2020, and she's a part of that. So I can only imagine what some of these delegation meetings are like when they're looking at somebody who basically wants to see them on the outs. You think she's biting off more than she can chew here? And also, I'm not clear what the agenda of these Justice Democrats are, but again, like people slept on her, some of the people they're propping up, David, they're well-funded. They've run before. They put scares into some of these people. I'm not so sure people really have thought through how this all plays out, even the Justice Democrats.
Yeah, I'm not really have either. And I think, it's worth noting that she has this huge online presence, but you don't really see her criticize other Democrats. You don't see her personally do it, although you do see Justice Democrats, which is a group that she is a part of. And so, it's a tough game because they really want to upset the Democratic Party. I think they're going to have a harder time doing that now that people sort of see them coming in a way. I mean, the Justice Democrats, they got behind 12 candidates in 2018, and she was the only one that won. And she won a very low turnout primary. And, going 1 for 12, I mean, it's not the kind of thing that most groups would really brag about. That said, that one victory they had obviously kind of rewrote the political landscape. So I think if they're smart, they'll sort of pick their targets moving forward.
Well, she is certainly the fastest rising star, many would argue, in the party, but also she's the greatest financial recruitment tool for the Republicans at the moment. And there's been some debates about what her long-term political ambitions are, especially since the New York political machine, she said, keep it. I don't really need it. And they tend to hold grudges. Is she serious, you think, as some say, that she would consider running for mayor in 2021? Where do you think the end game is?
I mean, it seems like running for mayor, almost running for any other office, would be a step down for her in a way. I mean, she has more influence than all but a handful of members of Congress, right? I mean, almost anyone other than Pelosi, even though she has no seniority. She may have made powerful enemies with these primary threats, but she's someone who can sort of drive the conversation in a way that almost no one else can. I can't see her giving that up to run for mayor and having to sort of deal with municipal issues that are complicated and less ideological. But she's going to run into a little bit of a problem because after the census in 2020, lines will get redrawn. And I know for a fact that other members of Congress do not want her drawn into their district because, she has this standing army ready to sort of knock on doors for her.
Yeah, that will be fascinating to see when they do draw the maps, what it's going to look like. David, great job. Really interesting piece. I appreciate the time. Thank you.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Coming up next, do you remember when President Trump promised to drain the swamp? Well, now Washington swampier than ever. It appears that things are getting even worse here. You got to see this to believe it. We'll explain after this.